How did you come up with the name and logo for My Dogma? Simple. The Dogma app is the core of the entire website. When I set out to build My Dogma, I set out to build really one tool. And it was a tool that was going to help me share my faith and what I believe on specific issues in a way as much as possible to not be in people's face, but so that people could go and look and see what I believed if they were so interested. And so the app works with a yes or no idea, where we just answer yes/no questions and then explain why we answered the way we did. And in this way, I really think that it's going to be able to help Christians work together. And I'll explain that in another video in the future. But the reason I chose the word dogma for the Dogma app was because it's all about a set of beliefs. Dogma is simply a set of beliefs, and when you're putting those beliefs online, right, that's a dogma. That's not somebody else's dogma. That's not an organization or a ministry's dogma. It's your dogma or my dogma. So that's where the name came from, and of course, when I searched for the domain name online, it was available, so hey, sometimes that's difficult. It made it a no-brainer at that point that was the direction we wanted to go. Now, the actual circle logo is a little bit trickier. We'll kind of start in reverse order there. Now, the colors, let's talk about that first, because if you notice, those colors kind of look almost rainbow-like. If you're keen or you know what the rainbow looks like, you'll recognize that they're upside down. And that has meaning because, one, we didn't want it to be a part of a movement that's popular right now. Two, we didn't want it to be a part of just the creation in the flood when God put the rainbow in the sky. Because the colors initially weren't a part of either of those. They actually came out of the design of the app. Each app has a color within My Dogma, because My Dogma is a collection of apps. The newsstand was red, the Dogma app was green, the search was blue, the notebook was orange, and so the plan is to have lots of apps, each with an identifying color. And so we designed the app with those features first, and then we're like, man, we should really incorporate that into the logo. So we tried all of these different color patterns, and it just didn't look good. It looked funny. We had the orange at the top or right next to the green, and it just was not melding well. And so when we put them in that order, we're like, hey, that looks pretty good, but we didn't want to start any ruffles or any trifles or any things that would create issues. So we flipped them upside down and we say, hey, that's brand new. Nobody has a claim on an upside down rainbow, at least to my knowledge anyways. But it also has significance because, My Dogma is about what you believe. And so even though I have a personal view on some of those things, you have a personal view on some of those things. And hey, maybe you can dig into my Dogma and figure out where I stand on some of that stuff. Now, the shape is a whole nother story in and of itself. So originally, I was trying to figure out what goes with yes and no, because the questions are yes, no, and then you explain your answer. And so I thought, well, that's kind of like flipping a coin. Then I saw this logo that it just had like a half-filled circle and the other half was see-through. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of simple, kind of neat. So I liked it because it had like opposites, which is what the yes and no is. And then I thought, oh man, let's make it look kind of like a moon. There's a dark side of the moon and a light side of the moon, and that means something to some people. And so we just kept playing with it, carving out little pieces here and there until we kind of had this weird moon type shaped figure. And that's where the figure came from. Well, when we slapped the colors on, at that point it was just trying to make it into a design that we liked. Now, the words "what you believe matter," you're going to see those pop up on the site, probably in the app every now and then. And those have a lot of significance for me personally, because from the very beginning, I had to remind myself a lot, how do I keep going? How do I get through this? And I always went back to this idea that like our beliefs drive our behavior and how we interact with the world. And so knowing how somebody believes is extremely important. It helps us to understand each other. It helps us to have a profitable conversation, talk about things that matter. And hopefully, when used right, it helps us to be a little bit more humble when we interact. And so what you believe matters was a reminder to myself. It's a reminder to everyone else. And it's a way that I care for people. I am a Christian, and I do believe that Jesus is the only way to heaven. And so when I think of people out there that don't have that relationship with Jesus, it breaks my heart, because what you believe matters. And so it has a lot of significance. It doesn't have to mean any one thing, but that's what it means to me, and that's why it's there. It's to keep me focused on the mission. So there you have it. That is the explanation of how we came up with the name and the logo for My Dogma.